I'm Paul Farmer, I'm Chief Executive at ageuk, and we're here today at ageuk Camden to talk about the important issue of eVisas. And we're meeting Minister Seema Malhotra, who is the Minister responsible for eVisas, so we can talk more about them. So I'm really delighted to be joined this afternoon by Minister Seema Malhotra. You're very welcome here to ageuk Camden. Thank you for coming. We're here to talk about an issue that we know is quite important to older people, which is the issue of eVisas. So could you just help explain to us what an eVisa is and who needs one?
An eVisa is very simply like an electronic version of a biometric residence permit or card, and that's the proof that people have of their immigration status and right to be here and to work and so on. The reason why we're having eVisas is because we recognise that the physical documents and the cards, they can be possibly lost or stolen, they can be tampered with, there can be delays getting them. And as part of the move to try and have an easier way in which people, when they travel, might cross the border more quickly and so on, or be able to share information with an employer for work, that to have that electronically can actually be a lot easier and more secure. That's why we've been making this transition to eVisas, and already we have over 6 million people using them.
Wow.
And since April, we've been supporting people who have the cards, the biometric residence permits particularly, to make that transition to the electronic version of that card. Now, what's important is that people are able to make the transition by effectively opening up what we call an eVisa account. And that is simply a login like you might have for a bank or something like that. And it enables you to see your eVisa, your electronic version of that permit. And so this change applies to those who have got those physical documents to show their status. Not if you're a British citizen, you have passports and so on, but it's if you've got those cards, or you may have legacy documents, i.e. you may have an indefinite leave to remain sticker or stamp in your passport. For those that have got the legacy documents, we're encouraging them to apply for an electronic visa, an eVisa. But the main change is now happening for those who have those biometric residence permits or cards, because those are now going online.
So it's a massive project that you're undertaking at the moment. We know that there's a change to the deadline date, isn't there? So perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about that.
The deadline date relates to the 31st of December 2024, because that's the date that a lot of BRP cards expire. They were given an expiry date. Now, what I want to make clear is that doesn't mean that someone's underlying status expires, because everyone's underlying status, if they may have a limited leave or a further leave to remain, or they may have they'll have the date that's particular to their circumstance, but that is unaffected by this. And the cards have expired because we're moving online with them, but the underlying status that people have has not changed.
It's a very important message.
And it's important to make that clear, because in doing that, it explains the difference between the date on your card and your underlying status being the same. And when you set up your eVisa account and see your electronic version of your BRP, if you like, your eVisa, you will see the date that is in line with your leave to remain or to be here in the UK. And what we know is important is that people are able to demonstrate that as a permission to travel or a permission to stay, permission to work. That's why we have extended some of the transition period, because it's important that, for example, if people travel over Christmas or the New Year and they haven't got their eVisa account fully working for themselves, that airlines are able to see that if you've got an expired BRP card, they can still take that as permission for you to travel and to be in the UK, because what they can do is use that card with your identifier to check your underlying status through the systems that they have contact with from the Home Office. And if there are any issues, then the airlines also have a 24-hour helpline. So they can phone up and say, I've got Paul here with me. He's travelling back to the UK. This is his details. Can you confirm for me that his underlying status is as I can see? So that's only in those small numbers of circumstances if there might be any issue with the eVisa account. That's why we've extended those transition measures, because we want to make sure this is as smooth as possible, and also to be able to give people the opportunity. For example, if some people may be working and changing their job, or they may be moving home and renting somewhere and need to prove that right. Again, if there's any issues in the early days of the new year, that there is that transition in place. So we've extended those measures. So at least up until the end of March, those extra measures are in place. But I want to also just make this point that the 31st of December, if that's on your card and you have ongoing status, it isn't a deadline in its own right. We do want people to set up their eVisa accounts. It is the most secure way, and it will be the best way of knowing that you don't have any problems with anything. But if people haven't, of course, you can still do it after the 31st of December. If you've got underlying status that's exactly the same, you can still do that in the new year, whenever you have the opportunity.
So thank you. There's lots of thought gone into making sure that there are plans in place to support people, like the 24-hour support line for the airlines. Of course, we also know that a lot of older people don't necessarily feel that comfortable in an online space, and this is a very online space. What sort of things have you put in place to ensure that older people are able to access the right kind of help and support in terms of completing this form?
We recognise that can be a challenge, and particularly for those that don't feel so comfortable with the computer. My mother-in-law is exactly the same, and everything on her phone and on the computer we support with. But I do want to give reassurance that we have got lots of support available. There is support, for example, you may have someone in your friends or family who could be nominated as a helper, or be nominated as a proxy. And they can be someone with your permission that can also work with the Home Office if you have any issues setting up your account or being able to access it. The help that's also available through our website can assist. For example, you might be able to phone, or you might be able to be supported to do any emails if people feel happy doing that. But also we have assisted digital as a support through a service through the Home Office. With that, it can be telephone, but also can be face-to-face. So that could be face-to-face in a community centre, and those appointments can be set up. Or it can be in circumstances where it's particularly important. It may be someone who finds it more difficult to get out of the house, that you can even have an appointment in your home.
Right.
And I would encourage people to see if there's any friends and family that can support, or to perhaps reach out to their local ageuk, because the Home Office does work with ageuk to listen to the concerns that may be raised from those who are using ageuk services, to improve what we're able to offer, but also to help provide some of that support more locally where it may be required.
No, that's really good to hear, and that combination of phone and face-to-face, we know is something a lot of older people really value.
I may add one other thing as well, because this is where, for example, links can be sent to people on WhatsApp and things to watch. So there are videos on YouTube that explain things really clearly, and some that are now with different language subtitles, and also being translated into different languages. So we hope that means it will be easier to understand first what eVisas are, just like an electronic version of something you're holding, and secondly, why you just need an account and how you just log on, a bit like you might log on to email, just to be able to access that. But in the end, why it is actually more secure and easier then to be able to use to show other people.
Excellent, great. Sometimes things go wrong.
They do.
What do people need to do if they find that the visa isn't really working?
Sometimes what has happened, and that's getting less and less now as the system is being rolled out, is that people might not be able to see their status immediately, or there may be some delays or something. Those situations are in proportion to the millions now. We think well over 9 million people actually on the eVisa system now. It's a very small number, but we do have what we call the resolution centre, the customer resolution centre, and there's a team of people there 7 days a week who are able to talk to you on the telephone if there's anything that perhaps maybe something that you need to do slightly differently or may not be clear the first few times. Or it may be that you can, for those who are comfortable, just have a web chat. We call it a web chat. It's like somebody there live at the other end, but you're just communicating to explain what's happening. But also, again, you can nominate a proxy person to perhaps make that contact on your behalf. If there's any issue that isn't to do with your logon, so something's just gone wrong with it at the time, that can be logged by the Home Office, and then as quickly as possible, at the moment it's within a few days, and if not faster, then that can be looked at. And if there's anything that needs to just be corrected at the Home Office end, then that can be done, and then you can be updated that situation has now been resolved. So I want to encourage anyone who has any difficulty, because whether the issue is something to do with how they're logging on themselves, or whether they think there's another issue with viewing, that there is support available, and we will do everything we can to get those issues dealt with as quickly as possible.
Brilliant. Just finally, let's just talk a little bit about legacy documents. And you already mentioned you want to encourage people to apply for eVisas. Could you just say a little bit more about the status of those documents and what you're encouraging people to do with legacy documents, and why eVisas are important in that sense?
Yes. Legacy documents are mostly where people, for example, have a sticker or a vignette in their passport, or a document that it gives them and shows them their indefinite leave to remain, and they may have had those documents for 20, 30, 40 years. We are encouraging people who have the legacy documents to move to an eVisa. It's a slightly different process. It's a different application form that you fill out online, and it's more streamlined now. There's a little bit of paperwork to do, but what it means is that when you have your eVisa account, when that is processed, again, if you do have a different employer, or you with rent or with travel, it's easier to show. In fact, however, it's important to say this: but to prove your right to work, you haven't used legacy documents actually for 10 years now. That has been a different process, so the change won't really affect that. But it is more a case of if people are using their documentation to prove for travel and so on. But the main issue being to make it easier, because in fact, if people have their legacy documents and they are going abroad now, those are still valid in the future to be able to use in the same way that you have in the past. And that's the main point. You can still use the legacy documents ongoing in the same way that you have in the past, particularly for travel and for rent. Obviously, it's been different for 10 years on work. But if you have an eVisa and you move towards that, then that is easier for you in the future. And whether it is for work or for rent or for travel, you just need to generate that share code, which is that like a PIN number type thing, and then you can use that to prove your rights.
So finally, what's the most important thing that you think people should pay attention to when it comes to eVisas right now?
I think what is important is that for people who haven't yet set up their eVisa account, that they do seek to do so as soon as possible. That will be the simplest and most secure way. and that if they do need support to do that, there's plenty of help available. They can reach out to the Home Office or through friends and family, or they can reach out through their local Age UK support services. And we will do everything we can to help them with that transition. And that when you do have an eVisa that's set up and you can see through an eVisa account, it is more secure, it is easier to prove and demonstrate that status. And it will be something that then is easier whether you're here or you're abroad. And I do hope that people will take that step to move to an eVisa as soon as possible.
Mr. Malhotra, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, you're most welcome.